Today we're delving into the realms of high vibrational living. We're going to explore the shocking but true reality of what happens when you elevate your vibration. Let's start our journey by delving into the first aspect, and it's quite fascinating. Imagine your brain as a mirror, reflecting the tapestry of everything you've learned and experienced in your life. It's not just a biological marvel, it's a masterpiece intricately shaped by your external environment. The feelings and emotions you go through each day are like echoes from your past experiences. If you feel like you're caught in the same emotional loop repeatedly, it's like a signal, a sign that there might not be much new happening in your life. Here's the crucial connection. Your thoughts and emotions are like dance partners, each influencing the other. If your thoughts are leading the dance, shaping your emotions, and vice versa, it's a hint that you might be dwelling in the past. It's like playing an old song on repeat. Now here comes the exciting part. Our research has unveiled a profound insight. When you blend a clear intention with a vision, a potential that already exists in the quantum field, something magical happens. It's like opening a door to a realm of possibilities that goes beyond the limitations of your past experiences. Picture it like this. Your intention is the compass, guiding you towards a vision of what you desire. This vision isn't just a daydream, it's a potential reality waiting for you to step into it. And this is where the magic starts to unfold. Now, let's dive into the second aspect, and it's a profound one. We're talking about intention, a force that can guide you through the vast quantum field. Imagine intention as a beacon, lighting the way through the possibilities that exist beyond what meets the eye. It's a powerful force that can shape your future. So here's a simple yet transformative exercise. Ask yourself, what would it be like to be healthy, wealthy, free, or deeply in love? These questions are like keys that unlock the door to a realm of potential experiences waiting for you. Now, the magic happens when you pose these questions. A remarkable part of your brain, known as the frontal lobe, springs into action. Think of it as a conductor leading a symphony. This area of your brain takes a panoramic view of everything you've learned and experienced, selecting various networks of neurons to craft an ideal vision seamlessly. This vision is not just a daydream, it's a potential reality eagerly waiting for you to step into. But hold on, it's not just about the mind. Thoughts are like the language your brain speaks, but feelings, well, they are the language of your body. To truly embrace the future reality you've envisioned, you need to bring together clear intention and elevated emotions. It's like creating a harmony between your thoughts and your feelings. Now let's explore the third key element, and it's a game changer. This goes beyond just wishing. It's about creating a whole new way of being. It involves transforming your very personality and, in doing so, crafting a brand new personal reality. Our research has uncovered some fascinating insights into this process. The journey involves regulating your internal states, essentially getting everything in sync. We're talking about creating coherence in the brain, making all those neurons work together in harmony. But it doesn't stop there. It's about generating elevated emotions like joy and gratitude. These emotions aren't just feel-good moments. They have the power to bring about a profound transformation. Picture it like this. When your brain is in sync, so is your heart, and when your heart is harmonious, your brain follows suit. It's a beautiful dance between two vital aspects of your being. This synchronization creates a powerful alignment that goes beyond wishful thinking. It's the real deal. So why aren't we living in these states every day? Well, here's the kicker. 70% of our waking time is dominated by stress hormones. These hormones push us into survival mode, where our focus narrows down to mere survival. In this mode, we become materialists, relying solely on our senses to define reality. Living like this creates a separation from our inner world. We start to believe that what we see, touch, and hear in the outer world is more real than what's happening inside us. It's like wearing blinders that keep us from truly experiencing the richness of our inner world. Now let's dive into the fourth aspect, and it's a real eye-opener. Living in stress is like carrying around a heavy burden that hinders us from truly experiencing life. When stress becomes our constant companion, it prevents us from trusting the unknown, opening our hearts to others, and embracing love. It's like being stuck in a survival mode that's all about just getting by, not thriving. Survival mode might help us stay safe in a dangerous situation, but here's the catch. It's not the best state for things like communication, creating, or learning. Imagine trying to learn something new when all your brain is focused on is survival. It's like trying to plant flowers in a field full of weeds. It's just not the right environment. To truly create, we need to let go of the very mechanisms that have kept us in survival mode. It's about breaking free from the habits and patterns that might have served us well in the past, but are now holding us back. The key here is recognizing when you're in a creative state and when you're not. This means being aware of your mental and emotional states. It's like having a dashboard that tells you whether you're in a mode to thrive or merely survive. Daily, take a moment to apply principles that can shift your mindset, principles that can transform your beliefs and perceptions. Beliefs are like the scripts we play in our minds repeatedly. They're thoughts rooted in past experiences, and often they're the invisible force shaping our reality. Changing them isn't just about wishing for something different. It's about making a decision with unwavering intention. This decision has to be so strong that it surpasses the ingrained programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. Let's dive deeper into the fifth aspect, and it's a game changer. Your body listens closely to the decisions you make in your mind. When you make a decision that becomes an unforgettable experience, something extraordinary happens. The past, all those old memories and feelings, well, they start fading away. It's like your body is saying, hey, we've got a new way of doing things now. Now, let's talk about something crucial, the victim mentality. It's when you feel like things outside of you control how you feel and think. Imagine this. If you're feeling upset because of a person or a situation, you're letting something out there dictate what's happening inside you. It's like giving away the steering wheel of your emotions to someone or something else. Here's the real challenge. Relying on things outside of you to feel good means you're letting those things control you. If your happiness depends on what's happening around you, you're basically dancing to someone else's tune. And that's tough because life is full of ups and downs, right? But the big shift happens when you realize something incredible. You are creating your reality. Yes, you. Not your neighbor, not your boss, not some random event. It's all in your hands, waiting for things outside of you to fill up. A feeling of emptiness or lack leads to a life spent wishing, wanting, waiting, and hoping. Now imagine this. You have the power to change that. You don't have to be a passenger in your own life, just reacting to whatever happens. You can be the driver, steering your life in the direction you want it to go. It's like taking the wheel and saying, I'm in charge here. So the power to transform your life lies within you. By elevating your vibration, you not only change your inner world, but also reshape your outer reality. The journey may not be instant, but with practice, intention, and elevated emotions, you become the master of your destiny. Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns. And then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. So we learn something new intellectually. We also cause networks of neurons to form. I mean, the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learned just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. So if they didn't review that information or repeat it, the connections pruned apart. So we know then that learning semantic information begins to organize circuitry in the brain, and experiences enrich the brain. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that, and that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. So if you take a thought, thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. So if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say you have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, your attitudes are just shortened states of being. You feel good in the morning, you feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I know from the research that we've done that the redundancy of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time, for example, a person has an insecure thought, then they feel insecure. The moment they feel insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. They fire and wire more circuits in their brain to feel more chemicals of insecurity. And then once they're feeling insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. And they do this over and over again. The redundancy and the repetition of that cycle over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. Once the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. It turns out that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are a set of habituations, unconscious thoughts, unconscious behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions that function like a subconscious computer program. So back to beliefs, an attitude, an attitude, an attitude are shortened states of being, and you combine them together then. Then a belief then, the cycle of thinking and feeling over time, creates a subconscious state of being. I don't move past the word visualization because I think it kind of conjures up a little bit too much of a spiritual association. The word that's used in science is called mental rehearsal. In mental rehearsal, there's two types of mental rehearsal. There's what's called internal mental imaging, which means you're in the scene as the first person experiencing it. And then there's called external mental imaging, which is you're observing yourself in the scene. It turns out that when you are actually in the first person and not the third person, that action of rehearsing what you're doing produces the strong biological change. Now let's talk about this. You can take a group of people that have never played the piano before and you can do a functional brain scan on them, and then you can teach them one-handed scales and chords, and they'll practice those chords 2 hours a day for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, they grow a whole new set of circuits on the opposite side of the brain. Well, that makes sense. You learn something new. Learning is making new synaptic connections. You get your body involved with some instruction. When you get your body involved, you're going to have a new experience. Experience enriches the brain. You pay attention to what you're doing. You've got to pay attention. You have to stay present. And if you repeat it over and over again, firing and wiring, you assemble new networks of neurons equal to your experience. Nothing new there. But you can take a group of people and you can have them close their eyes to a brain scan on them before the experiment. 5 days later, do a brain scan after. And for 2 hours a day, they mentally rehearse playing those scales and chords. At the end of 5 days, they grow the same amount of circuits in their brain as the people actually physically doing the exercise. So what's the relevance? Number one, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. So the thought becomes the experience, and the brain looks like it's been playing the piano for the last 5 days, but they never lifted a finger. Now, from a biological standpoint, our brains are a record of the past. They're an artifact of everything we've learned and experienced to this moment. When we prime the brain to change its circuitry before the experience, now the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's now a map to the future. And so as we warm up those brain circuits, it's more easy for us to slip into a supernatural behavior. If you take those people and you set them from the piano, and they've never played the piano before, but they've been mentally rehearsing for the last 5 days, they'll play those scales and chords. Like magic, they just learned how to do it just by changing their internal state. Take a group of men. You can have them close their eyes and for an hour a day mentally rehearse doing bicep curls over and over again, and they add an emotional component called harder, stronger, more intense, and they put themselves in that first-person internal mental image. At the end of 2 weeks, they have a 13.5 increase in muscle strength, and they've never performed the activity. Not only is the brain changed to look like the experience has already occurred, now the body has changed by thought alone. The body looks like it's been working out for the last 2 weeks. So then the power of mental rehearsal, of imaging, primes the brain and body to look like the future has already occurred. And when you set the extent of your limit and you can image what you can do even further than what's normal, then you are stepping into the unknown. And of course, then your body is going to follow your mind because the experience has already happened. You know, the challenge behind all of this is that people have to understand that there is a journey that they have to take. In other words, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who we are is a habit, and it's programmed in the body to keep doing something so many times, the body knows now how to do it better than your brain. So if that's 95% of who we are, the body becomes the mind. And most of the time people are unconscious. So they're unconscious to the way they think. They're unaware of how they act, what they look like. They're not even aware of what they're feeling because it just feels like their normal self. So then to go from the old self to the new self, you've got to cross a river. And so then the moment they step into that river of change, the body has been conditioned to be the mind. The body doesn't like the uncertainty. And when you go to bed at night, you go from beta to alpha, theta, delta. So you slide up the scale when you wake up and you slide down the scale when you go to bed at night. And most people, when they go to bed at night, they just go from beta right down the delta. They fall very quickly. You can teach people then how to just sit and slow everything down and begin to visualize, begin to affirm, begin to change their thought, to begin to work with their body. And it seems, according to our research, that those changes can last. So what do most people do when they wake up in the morning? Your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact, a memory bank of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. So people wake up in the morning and they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories in the brain that are connected to certain people and certain things at certain times and places. So they wake up in the morning and they start thinking in the past. Now, the moment they start having those thoughts, Every one of those experiences has an emotion associated with it. So when they start thinking about their problems or the problems of the world or the problems of their body or whatever it is, problems at work, they all of a sudden start to feel the correlated emotion. So now their body's in the past. So now people then get caught up in an emotion. They reaffirm their identity. They could wake up in the morning and feel nothing at all, and then all of a sudden they say, well, wait a second, I've got to get back to myself. So they start thinking about their problems, and here come the emotions. And they say, oh, now I feel like me again. So those emotions then begin to influence our thoughts. Like if you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And when you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. And when you feel like a failure, you're going to think more thoughts equal to being a failure. And the cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking causes you to say, I am a failure. And the repetition of that process of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking conditions the body to become the mind of that emotion. Now the emotion is stored in the body. Now the body's literally in the past. And the body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the actual experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body's believing it's in the same experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So getting people out of the past is the work. So then they wake up in the morning after they reaffirm who they are and they can't think greater than how they feel. They're in the familiar past. So if you're in the familiar past, you're going to do the things that reaffirm the emotions of your predictable future. So you wake up in the morning, you check your WhatsApp, you check your text, you check your Twitter, you tweet, you check your Facebook, you check your email, you check the news. Now you are really connected to everything that's known in your life. And then you run through a series of routine behaviors. You move around your house the same way you always do. You do all the same things. You go to the same grocery store, you buy the same food, you shop the same way. You do all these, you watch the same TV shows, and people do this for 10, 20, 30 years. Now their body's on autopilot, and their body's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past. We could actually take their yesterday and lift it up and set it on their tomorrow, which means then they've lost their free will to a program. So now the familiar past and the predictable future is called the known. There's only one place that you have to train a person to be so that they're not in the known, they're in the unknown, and that's called the present moment. So people get very happy being unhappy because they would rather cling to their unhappiness than take a chance in possibility. So stepping into that river and beginning to make a new choice and understanding that uncertainty, that unpredictability is the unknown. Now you're in that river of change, and it is the neurological, the biological, the chemical, hormonal, genetic death of the old self. People say to me, well, if there's uncertainty, I can't predict my future. And I always say the same thing. The best way to predict your future is to create it, not in the known, right there. That uncertainty, you can learn now how to regulate your state instead of living in fear, because the idea that things are going to get worse, the idea that you can't predict, the idea of being uncertain or can't control something actually sets off the stress response. So now you're in the unknown, and this survival gene is switched on. Of course, people are going out of the infinite possibilities that exist in the quantum field. They're going to select the worst scenario in their mind, right? So then what if you're in the unknown and you understand that, and now you can work back into that present moment and you say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain, put my attention behind? What behaviors today, one day, what behaviors do I want to demonstrate? And the act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Fifth dimensional creation has nothing to do with going anywhere to get anything. Because if you combine a clear intention, a coherent thought, coherent brainwave pattern with a coherent heart, moving into that elevated emotion, thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. The magnetism of this center becomes the energy. The intention is carried on that energy, and now you are broadcasting a new signature into the quantum field. Now, if it's done properly and you understand the mechanics, in fifth dimensional creation, you are not going anywhere to get anything. You are actually collapsing space and time, and you are drawing the experience to you. You are the vortex, because when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential that exists in the quantum field, like tuning a radio dial, when you lock into that frequency, if you keep revisiting that energetic signature over again every single day, then you don't have to go anywhere and get it. The new job finds you. The new house actually finds you. The new relationship finds you, because you are the vortex that's drawing the experience to you. So if you're truly in the creative process, my definition of creation is when I forget about me. I become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, in no time. I become pure consciousness. And the moment I reach that elegant moment of the generous present moment, all possibilities in the quantum field exist truly when our brain and body are in the present moment. Getting there is the work. So then, most people then create reality from what we call three-dimensional creation, while they're matter, trying to change matter. And if I'm going to get a good job, I'm going to do 100 applications and go on 20 different interviews, and then it's going to take me 3 months to get a job. I may not even like that job, but I got a job. You want a new sperm donor? You want a new partner? You want a new specimen? You want somebody to live your life with? Then you're going to go on Match.com. You're going to spend 2 hours. You're going to take time in three-dimensional reality, because real time is defined by us moving through space. And in this dimension, there's way more space than anything else. So we experience time as we take matter through space. That's how people create. You buy the house, 30-year mortgage, you pay it off in 3 hours. It takes time to do that. Now, when you teach people how to take their attention off of matter, off of objects, off of the particle, and sense energy and sense space, and pay attention to nothing, the moment they begin to open their focus, all of a sudden their brain waves begin to change from beta to alpha, but not only just alpha, where the imaginary inner world starts to become more real, but very coherent brainwave patterns in alpha. So when you're under stress, you're trying to control that person, that thing they're experiencing, your attention is shifting from one thing to the next. Turns out that each one of those things has a neurological network in the brain assigned to it, because we've experienced. As you try to control all these things and your attention is shifting, the brain is very incoherent, because the moment you open your focus and the brain begins to acclimate, different compartments of the brain begin to unify. They begin to synchronize. What syncs in the brain links in the brain. When your brain is coherent, you're coherent. When your brain is incoherent, you are incoherent. So we've measured this thousands of times. There'll come a moment in our work during a retreat, as an example, by the third day or so, you'll see very large areas of the brain, huge areas, begin to synchronize together. Then we'll see the left side of the brain talk to the right side of the brain. We'll see the front part of the brain talk to the back part. You see this kind of whole brain state starting to start to take. See it every time. Walk around and look at that person, and you will see tears of joy running down their face. They feel so whole. They feel so complete that it's impossible to want. How can you want when you're whole? And that's the moment the magic happens. But they ultimately developed the cancer. So he was looking at matter thinking there's a glow of, with his measurements, matter's emitting a field. But it's not the case. It's actually the field that's creating matter. So change the field and you change matter. There's only 2 components according to the research that shows how to change the field. Here's an example. They did an experiment where they took a group of people that were great healers. And they took these vials of DNA and set them out in front of these people. And they said, now listen, this is a mindful function. With all of your intention, we want you to see this DNA wind or unwind in your mind. Just keep seeing it wind or unwind, wind or unwind. So they did it over and over again, over and over again. They checked the DNA. Guess what happened? Nothing. Intention did nothing to change the DNA. So then they said, okay, open your heart, create an elevated emotion, and just feel gratitude and radiate that feeling of care and love into the field. And let's see if that changes the DNA. They elevate their emotional state. They do it for a period of time. They check the DNA. Guess what happens? Nothing. But when they say to the people, what I want you to do is see the DNA unwind in tension, one frequency, the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feel the emotions you would feel as if it already unwound elevated emotion, magnetic field in the quantum. Over 20% of the DNA unwound at a remote location. So thought being the electrical charge in the quantum field, feelings being the magnetic charge. How you think and how you feel broadcasts a field. So now not just any type of field is going to do that, it's got to be coherent. So we practice creating brain coherence. We actually measure it. We practice creating heart coherence. Why? Because once energy moves right up in here and you can change resentment or frustration or impatience to joy, to freedom, to gratitude, and we're measuring to see if you're doing it. So now when the heart starts regulating, it starts beating like a drum and it starts to produce a measurable magnetic field. It's up to 3 meters wide. Now that energy is a frequency, and that frequency can carry information, and that information is your thought, is your intent. In other words, the elevated emotional gratitude can carry the thought of your health. The emotion of suffering cannot carry the thought of your health. It carries a different set of thoughts. So you can think positively all you want. And if you're feeling miserable, your mind and body are in opposition. So we teach people how to put these two coherent signatures together. The thought sending the signal out, the feeling drawing the event back. But the more coherent, the more organized the signal, the more connection you have to the field. So coherence is a synchronization. As an example, when people are under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system, they're living by the hormones of stress. The arousal of those chemicals drives the brain into a faster brain frequency called high beta brain waves. In high beta, the arousal, you're in survival. What you're trying to do now is control and predict everything in your life. You're